All right. My name is Christen, and I'm going to be going through our foundations category direction for navigation and settings. And I've got Orit here with me. She's going to be reviewing and giving feedback as we go through all of it. And we've had 3 big updates in the last month to the direction. So everything has been ripped down and sort of rebuilt. So we're going to talk through all of it. I can skip by introduction. So the biggest part of our direction for navigation is that we recognize that navigation is the most important part of the UI, and it's how people discover features and how they get around the whole app. So it's really critical to how someone perceives GitLab.
Do you mind if we take a step back for a minute?
Yes,
Christen? Sure. And this is very timely because we've been talking asynchronously on an MR related to this. The page is bundled together, navigation and settings.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see the two together? Are they the same fundamental kind of concept? Can you walk me through what's in your head in that sense?
Yeah, so, and to be honest, I haven't had time to go deep into settings, but I'll give you my high level on it. So the two could be similar from a UI perspective in terms of having the settings in the left nav that's owned by navigation, right? So the look and feel would need to work with navigation, but there's a depth to settings and the architecture of groups and projects and now workspaces, which is coming, which is very outside what my team is able to dive into and work with customers on, to know how settings might inherit one another, how you might search them, how they would roll up, roll down, all of that. And so I think that if we were just reskinning current settings and making them look nice, like they could be potentially together, but given the big changes that are coming with, and permission models too on settings, I do believe that that should probably be its own category and have its own UXR done, customer interviews, all of it, that would give it the same level of attention that would be needed. I think it's the key to workspace's success is managing the settings of your workspace. So,
well, first of all, we're saying workspace is a singular and not a plural, because we're looking at it as the one place for your organization and not multiple. Mm-hmm. Second of all, settings actually touches everything on the product. It's not confined to groups and projects. It could be on the repo. Mm-hmm. It could be on the CI/CD. It holds variables. It can be user-based. So how do I look at my own interface? I can choose the UI, the colors, whatever. And it can be an admin level. So there's a lot of different things that we can look at it. I'm not sure. I mean, this is worth a totally different discussion, and I don't want to go into in this specific session that we're talking about. I was just very curious to hear your thoughts, because workspace is really around projects and groups. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that, I mean, setting spans beyond that. So I'm not sure that's the right home. But again, not for this, not related to our discussion today.
Yeah. We're technically blocked by all of their discussions and their decisions on that. Same with Hannah with access and the permission models. We would really need to dive in and know those to do the right thing with the UI. So if it were owned by the designers on those teams, we think they could move it down the line faster and maybe better than we could. But we can decide on that at a later point. Right now, I only have capacity to focus on navigation. And so we've got it in there and we've said we're not working on it, but that's up for discussion. So I think we should have another talk about that at some point. Okay, cool. So, and I'm referring to navigation because that's all that we are currently focusing on. So as I'm referencing these, a lot of these could be applied to settings or any type of UI as well. Given that navigation is the core part that people move around the product, we wanted to find some reasons why the navigation is important for our users from a business perspective and for everyone else. Every product manager launching a feature relies on navigation to get their customers to it. So one of the tenets of we found this, it's a deck of UX cards. They're called trap cards and UX tenets. It's blurring it out. Justin Ferris showed me this, and one of the examples in there, one of the core tenets is I quickly achieve mastery, and it's the tenet of habituation and how you feel comfortable in an app because you know where you're going and you're wayfinding. And that's essentially what navigation comes down to and why it's so important. If they're struggling with nav, they're going to struggle with the whole app. The other part that why it's so important is that we have to consider accessibility at GitLab. Many companies can't even adopt software that isn't compliant with accessibility standards, and our navigation is essential to that and our complying with VPAT. Same with design system, which we'll get into on another day, but those are really important to our team and making sure that we deliver that value to GitLab and the rest of every other team that's using navigation to deliver their features. So the scope of the vision for us, I've narrowed it down just so we're really clear on what we're working on. We're working on the top and left navigation in GitLab. Those are defined in the docs of GitLab. We've got top nav and left nav. We're not going into sidebar, anything like that. We're just owning that top and left architecture currently. If we come with a new design that blows these away or adds 2 left bars, we'll be clear about that, and we'll make changes as we move out features, but right now that's the scope. So knowing that the navigation is a crucial part of a user's adoption, we've invested heavily in a new navigation design, which we're calling the North Star design. And we're getting a lot of user feedback. And over time, I've looked through SUS surveys, and there's so much feedback around feeling lost in GitLab or not knowing where they start. So we know that this is a really important problem to invest in. We've created a full product team, the foundations team, to address these foundational parts of GitLab, like navigation and settings in our design system, to help improve overall usability of our product, eventually moving SUS, and that would be the goal, is to make our users happier and ensure that we're delivering a consistent and usable experience to everyone. There's 3 main challenges that we've noted around navigation, and makes them kind of an interesting, it's an interesting feature to own as a PM because of these challenges. So because the complexity of our navigation and GitLab as a whole, we have over 500 features and 14 user personas using navigation. And we have to be Switzerland in a way, but also make sure that we provide value to our customers in a way that makes sense to them, and that we can support the company in terms of driving growth. So that's an interesting challenge, the balance between making it work great for everyone. Also, we have our paid customers, and there's a lot of different personas that may have different needs or value points within the ecosystem that we need to take into account. The second thing is around that habituation principle. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? But there's a natural inclination to hate a navigation change. Like Gmail rolled out a left side nav this week, and I hate it. Like off the bat, I just don't want it there. It's just a normal, natural thing. And people go through sometimes a swing of 1 to 2 months or 3 months before they habituate and like something. So we just have to keep that in mind. When we roll things out, there could be bad feedback immediately, and we need other things like data, like checking conversion rates on paid tiers and things like that to verify it's not just the SUS that's tanking, and hold with people a bit longer through it.
So speaking of Gmail, are we thinking of making changes and then allowing people to go back to the classic?
Yeah, so I'll get into the rollout plan, but yeah, we're going to have a toggle in your user profile that lets people go back to try to mitigate that. Yes, and then the third one is custom navigation is a challenge. So we hear it all the time that our users want to customize their left nav, and if we were to allow them to drag and drop everything or remove items from navigation, we would have a huge disparity between what our docs say. So let's say someone's trying to learn how to find a security feature in docs and it's gone because someone on their team turned it off or removed it out of the navigation. So that's a challenge. But we want to respect that people do want to customize or pin or give more prominence to certain parts of the navigation that make sense for their organization. So we have to walk that line. It's a balance between total customization and ensuring that docs and alignment happens there. So that's a big challenge for our team when we're considering these new designs. Okay, and then where we're headed. So given the challenges above, this is our current plan for how we're going to move forward. I've talked about our North Star vision. There's 6 designs that I linked there, and these are all going through UXR. They actually just finished. There's many different ways. There's one that relies on Breadcrumbs, one that kind of looks like Slack. Really interesting ways to reimagine GitLab. So those are all going through testing, and we'll be delivering the insights from that this week to see what the preliminary round. We had 6. We want to get 6 down to 2 or 3. And then those will move on into the final round that's more detailed, and we'll get it down to 1 by the end of the quarter that we can move into MVCs.
So I have a crazy idea. Tell me what you think about it. What do you think about maybe taking the finalists into commit, New York, London, coming up, and getting people playing around with that and getting their opinions there?
If we can get it, isn't that September 15th? What's the date?
22nd of September and then October 17th, 18th.
It's a tight timeline. If we get to the final, that would be really cool, though. It might be cool to demo it at the, I don't know if they'll have like a booth or something, or have everybody kind of just look and see what they think.
Yeah, there will be booths and there's different tracks.
Okay.
I wonder, I think that this could be really interesting.
Yeah, it would be a great first impression, like just hear what people think. But yeah, let's talk to the team about that and just see if the times align and we don't end up putting too much pressure on design. That could be cool. And are you going to New York? Are you gonna be there?
I will be there partially. My flight goes back this evening.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, let's talk about that because that could be cool to highlight. So we're going to go through those. I kind of talked through UXR. And then the other part of it is we'll do a continual quarterly review of SUS verbatims to keep testing from there. So the three themes we have now are minimize feeling overwhelmed, orient across the platform, and pick up where you left off. That's what we're using to test all of these North Stars. Asking questions like, do you know how to get back to that issue that you were just on? Do you feel like you know where you are in GitLab? Questions like that. And we can consider these closed when the prototype passes through those questions and passes. And those would be the same questions we'd want to use with user feedback, or at like if we were to bring it to commit and talk to customers in real time, we could use those prompts essentially to see how people feel about the nav and get their first insights. We'll also track all of the app usage data. That's one of the things I've been mentioning in the PI updates, that we need to have a fully instrumented navigation, and any MVCs that we roll out should be fully instrumented and have good event naming architecture. There's other types of navigation that we are not prioritizing near term. So we've talked about dashboards, landing pages, keyboard navigation, and other things. Those are in our mind's eye, and they're showing up in some of the designs for North Star, like having a landing page be there. But we're not building that yet. We're going to get a bit further down the line with North Star and then see if we can start doing some actual designs on dashboards or landing pages if we see that need come out of the research.
So you mentioned that the team is really focused on left nav and top nav.
Mm-hmm.
However, you also mentioned breadcrumbs, which is a little bit under that. Mm-hmm. Is that included or not included in terms of what the team is focusing on?
So the breadcrumbs came through as one of the 6 designs that we're testing. That's design number 4. That was Sid's contribution, actually, his design. And so he took our breadcrumbs and moved them into the top nav. Oh, sorry, I've got the wrong one. Oh, there it is. See this at the top? So that's why that one's in there. And so it's an alternate concept where you take that, you basically make setting scope on the breadcrumbs be the top bar. And so that's being tested at the same level with the rest. And the contribution came through along with the other ones.
When do you think we're going to be down from the 6 to the finalists?
So the readout deck, as soon as we're done this call, I'm going on with Anne and we're doing the readout to talk down to the final 2 to 3. It should be by the end of this week that we actually get the 2 finalists. We're waiting on the designers to make the call, because from the research they've seen, they've actually saw that they could pull 2 or 3 of those designs into one new design that would move forward in the next one. So we would have an old one go up against kind of the user feedback driven one. It's a bit complex, but I think we're going to have it by end of this week, which is really exciting. And we'll be able to see kind of what our users actually wanted. Are you still there? I'm not sure if it's frozen. I think we're frozen.
Sorry about that, Kristen. I'm back.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So you heard the ending kind of is end of this week for figuring out the final 2. Okay. We talked about the personas. We've got all of them interacting with navigation. And then here's where we get into driving business value, which is our rollout plan and how we're going to track. So we think that we could have an impact on the retention of users and overall net retention of customers. We're also segmenting all of our PPI metrics by tier. So we're constantly going to be looking at how are our paid users using navigation compared to all users and our free users. And we're also going to be tracking SUS, which I'll get into down below. So the way we intend to roll this out is we'll do a 3-month beta opt-in of the new navigation with a toggle on and off to the new nav in the user's profile. That will let us build all of our MVCs kind of under that umbrella. And then at the 3-month mark, or as soon as we're feature complete, we'll test the business impact of our new navigation by launching an A/B test to approximately 30% of our users. And then this cohort would receive a 50-50 split of the old versus new navigation. So in that time, when they get it, at the point where we want to roll to everybody, we'll be able to track net retention and free to paid conversion of the cohort over 3 months. That will give us.
I really love the rollout and the ability to use a feature flag so that if something really horrible goes, you can just turn it off.
Yes.
I do want to ask how we're looking at existing customers versus new ones, because I understand that, the existing customers, they don't like when their cheese moves, but for new ones, they don't really know. Maybe we roll it out to them without having a fallback.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. We could have a feature flag just for new customers so they go into that new world and just see how it works for them. That could be an alternate. That would be a good test. And this 3-month mark, I'm stating it as at the 3-month mark. That could be at 6 months. We could decide, right, when we could leave that button, the toggle there for a year if we're getting a lot of a really negative impact, and keep iterating. But the point where we do pull it and go to everybody, we would check conversion rates on a lot of these other metrics just to make sure we're not having a negative impact on our users and they're free to try to paid conversions and things like that.
Okay, one thing that I don't see that's written here and I'm curious about is I am a very classic who moves my cheese thing. I hate things move around. Like someone put the web ID under code. It took me like 2 weeks to figure out where it was. I finally figured it out, by the way.
Nice.
But are we going to help the users find stuff? Like a lot of times when there's big navigational changes in applications like Gmail, for example, there's like, what's new, check it out. Like when I get a new Apple phone or when you upgrade the OS, it always tells you, here's check out what's new and how do I find something. And sometimes there'll even be like a question mark, where did this go in like the old spot or whatever. Are we thinking of that as well?
So right now, currently it's not planned. But there are a few issues around like, how do you move something, and you could like leave its little placeholder there and just tell the user where it went. I'm gonna look into it a bit more in terms of our app and what our capabilities are for doing that. But like, I think that could be a good use. Also, maybe having an explainer video and or a series of blog posts throughout this that kind of take the users with us over the year and like say that why we're doing these things and encourage the feedback so that everybody's kind of aligned, along with user surveys too. And those could point, hey, did you see our blog on why we're changing nav? Here's what are your thoughts, or something like that. So I think helping to guide the user in multiple ways could help with that too. I like that idea though. I wish I don't know that we do like any types of walkthroughs or things like that in GitLab at this point, or have the infrastructure, but I'm going to look into it and see. And then
As you own navigation, it's up to you to create it.
Right. We got to make it work. Okay, that's good feedback. And then the final is kind of this multifaceted measurement to track the success of the rollout. So we basically, to just use sus, and so sus is very important, right? We're driving to bringing that ratio of total navigational items down over time. However, it's a lag metric, and everyone could be in the who moved my cheese and be really angry about it, right? Our sus could go the other way, and then would we just roll back this navigation? We would need to have other metrics in place that would let us help see kind of from the user's perspective, but actually what's going on. So our goal would be to have no negative impact to current conversions and net retention by tracking cohorts once we fully switch people over. Have user surveys at time of launch to get feedback and during the beta opt-in. And then give that the navigation is fully tracked on the modern event naming architecture. So we could do smaller A/B tests with this as we get going in terms of if we have to move items around or things like that. Ideally, we could just do it, get feedback, and get into a rhythm where we could deliver these types of changes to navigation in a really like short 1 to 2 release period of time versus having to stretch them out over like a whole year. That would be the end goal. But without this data in place, it's going to be difficult to just wait and see with sus, and then it's just going to be a really long turnaround. So that's the goal, is have all of these different ways of checking in. And I think your idea around adding a cohort of all new users, when we get to the point where the nav feels well enough, not as beta, that we could roll that out to everybody. That could be another way we go about this, an alternate view.
Another question that I have here, since we're doing a gradual rollout, which is, the GitLab way, let's iterate. We may have a period of time where we're going to have wonky experiences because we changed something in one place, but we didn't change it in another. Talking about workspace, that's classical. Like we changed something at the group, but we didn't change it at the project. And since we're heavily relying on the metrics here, how are you taking that into consideration?
Yeah, so with the metrics, the way that we're naming them, they'll have a unique event name, and they could show up in any navigation based on the alternate metadata in that event. So if it rendered up like the issue in badge, if that's rendering on top nav, its metadata is going to say top nav. But if I have the North Star nav where it's on the left, it's going to render in that, and we could cut the data in both. So we could see clicks on it on the old and the new. So that would be one way when things move all around, how we could keep that consistency. And that's why we're changing the naming of each event to be consistent.
One more follow-up on that. So A/B testing, are we thinking about doing this random, or is it persistent? Meaning the same user can get 2 different experiences when they log in 2 different days of the week, or are we going to keep consistency?
Yeah. We haven't gone that far on deciding I'd have to talk to engineering, but my gut would say, but given that there's the who moved my cheese, we'd like to segment them and probably give them more time with it versus having things keep moving would be the goal, because we don't want to frustrate them and just keep having them be guinea pigs. I think testing to maybe even 10% of users. So you're using a small subset, getting the usage data in place, then making the call of whether it was successful or not and having it go through the rollout to everybody. I would love to iterate like crazy, but like we do have to be just cognizant of that, of constantly shifting the sand beneath people's feet is going to not have a good impact on us. Okay, we're almost at time here. I've added what's next and why. And so I've added some milestone indicators for what we're doing right now from the roadmap. So we've talked about the 6 designs. We are shipping this release a small change. The menu is being updated. It's losing some of its redundancy. That one we're going forward with. We don't feel it's more visual changes. We don't think it's going to make a major impact to our users. So that one's just actually going to ship, which will be a big win for the team and our user base. We've got tracking being added, building out the direction with usability questions. And then eventually, end of this quarter, it's on my OKRs as well to get that big North Star design down into at least 3 MVCs. And then we can move forward with engineering and start this plan. At some point, we'll have to do an an accessibility audit across navigation. That's something we've been doing through our whole design system. Jeremy's been working on it. We also need to do that at some point so we can give ourselves a rating on how accessible we are. That's not planned right now.
When you mention accessibility, it even segments more the segment. Like lots of websites that I've been in, there's like this like popover that says, what do you want? Like what kind of accessibility you want? How does that affect the way you're thinking about going into these A/B tests? Are they part of the A/B test accessibility, or is that like later on?
It is later on, unless we end up doing accessibility testing with users that have issues with accessibility. But the way we're doing with design system is we audit each of the elements. It gets a rating, and the most critical things that need to be fixed for it to be accessible, like contrast or font size or things like that. And then we roll that out to the whole app. So we would do probably the same thing. We would follow up if there's links in navigation that are missing, their ARIA tags or things like that. We would basically roll that out on its own to everybody. What are we not doing? As a rule, we're not redesigning individual content pages that are owned by other teams. We've also deprioritized all other navigation issues outside of the North Star MVC. We're not diving into full designs for dashboards or user pages until we get the North Star underway and we can find the capacity to do that. And we'll still be doing opportunity canvases and exploration into the business value of those and see if we can get more investment, but we are at our capacity with North Star design. We're not going to be driving ARR through upselling or cross-selling with navigation. We could revisit this if we begin to work on dashboards and we have the opportunity to highlight features or something to that effect. And then for settings, basically we've talked through this a lot, but right now we're not prioritizing it. We do have future goals for it, which could stay with our team if we get the time and the capacity to dive in. That could also move to another category or another team if we want to have that discussion. We're not using a maturity plan currently or have jobs to be done. We're moving forward with North Star without those and just using the SUS feedback to make our decisions. And then I've aggregated the top user issues, customer issues, dog fooding, and other important links around GitLab. So those are there now. They weren't in the last.
Cool, looks good. I'm excited about the plan. I'm really excited about the A/B tests aspect. Of course, there's a lot of work to do in terms of instrumentation and data and whatnot, but I think it looks really good.
Nice. Thank you.